with everybody. Can you hear me fine? At the back. Yeah. If you can't hear me, just tell me to speak up.
No.
So, wanted to have a look at the woes in the Bible. So, can anyone tell me anything about the woes? Where we find them, what they're part of?
Find them in Revelation 9?
Yeah, find them in Revelation chapter 9.
They're part of the trumpets.
Yeah. So the woes are part of the trumpets. So in Revelation chapter 8, we have 7 trumpets. But then there's a specific amount of them which have what are called the woes. And so these are singled out of the 7 trumpets and distinct from the other trumpets. And so we want to have a look at that today to see what they are and what they really mean to us for us living here at the end of the world. So we know that we find this understanding of the woes and the trumpets in the book of Revelation. And I just wanted to read a quote from Acts of the Apostles 585, paragraph 1. I'll just read the bold section. Because some of these principles have been touched on before by Tyler, at least, and the other people who've been speaking here, which is basically the Daniel and Revelation 1 book, and they're really important for us at the end of the world. So, in Acts of the Apostles 585, paragraph 1, it says, "In the Revelation, all the books of the Bible meet and end." So, a casual reading of this might just, I don't know how you interpret a casual reading of this, but to me it says that when you're looking at the book of Revelation, you're not just looking at the book of Revelation, you're looking at the whole Bible. Because to understand the things you find in the Revelation, you need to understand the rest of the Bible. To understand the rest of the Bible, you need to put it into context in the book of Revelation. So for example, in the book of Revelation, we find some symbology there of what's one of the main themes that we see throughout the whole book of Revelation from the beginning to the end?
Repeat and then life.
Repeat and then
Everlasting gospel?
I do this quite often. Ask a very big question, and a very broad question, and you can have many answers to it. I was looking for the sanctuary. Yeah, so we have in Revelation chapter 1, we have Christ stood among the 7 golden candlesticks. And when we look at the trumpets, it's also got something to do with the sanctuary. And it's just the sanctuary themes all the way through. But when was this written? The book of Revelation. When was the book of Revelation written?
Around 100 AD.
About 100 AD. And what had happened to the sanctuary, at least on earth by then? It had been destroyed in 70 AD. So what this is doing, it wasn't borrowing themes from something that's existing at that time. It was looking back and borrowing themes from the Old Testament. And so as we'll see when we study through the woes, we'll have to go into the Old Testament and throughout all the books of the Bible to really understand these woes. So just a few Bible texts. 1 Corinthians 10:11. Brother Tyler talked about it earlier. It says, all these things that we read in the Bible happen unto us for ensamples or types. So when you're reading anything in the Bible, they're types, and we apply them now spiritually at the end of the world. So this is important when we're looking at certain stories. It might look like it's just some men doing something, digging a well, and you just think, oh, that's interesting, they dug a well. But really, when we're looking at the end of the world, it has more significance than that. Just like the sanctuary, you had the lavers, you had all these things that were literally something, or the sheep, but they represented something more spiritual, a more important lesson at the end of the world. And 1 Corinthians 14:32 says, and the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets. So this tells us that one book cannot contradict another book, but it tells us even more importantly that one book harmonizes with the other book. when we looked at Revelation 17 earlier with Brother Tyler, we saw that there was mountains and kings and heads. And where did we go for an explanation of what these were? Went to the Bible, yes. But did we look in the book of Revelation?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But where else did we go for an explanation of? Okay, what did
Daniel.
we went to Daniel, didn't we? It didn't really give us an explanation of what the mountains or the heads are in the book of Revelation. We had to go to the book of Daniel. And so this is just something to prepare us to really understand these things. We need to be going to other books to really understand actually what the book of Revelation is saying. A lot of people misunderstand these mountains and say it's different things like music and media and government and education just because they don't use the Bible to interpret itself. Okay, so these are a few principles. I want to skip past them for time because Brother Tyler has already gone through them. Basically, God showing the end from the beginning, and if anyone wants these notes, by the way, I can share them. They're written in a way that you can just read and it kind of interprets and explains as you go down. So, if you turn to Revelation chapter 8, and we'll read verse 2. Revelation 8, verse 2.
And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets.
Okay. So we see how many angels? There's 7 angels and they have 7 trumpets. Now, Revelation 8, which we won't be going into too much detail. We won't be going into any detail. It's just a delineation of the first 4 trumpets. So if you turn to verse 13, you'll see that chapter 8 describes the first 4 trumpets and gives a description of what they do and what it looks like. And then at the end of the chapter, it will tell us that there's 3 woes which are yet to come. If you read that in Revelation chapter 8, verse 13. But let's read verse 12 and 13.
And the 4th angel sounded, and the 3rd part of the sun was smitten, and the 3rd part of the moon, and the 3rd part of the star, so as the 3rd part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a 3rd part of it, and the night likewise. And I beheld, and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, 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 to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpets of the 3 angels which are yet to sound.
Okay, so we see in Revelation, we saw at the beginning there was 7 trumpets and 7 angels. And in Revelation 8, chapter 8, verse 12, it mentions what angel or what trumpet. So it mentions the 4th angel, the 4th angel or 4th trumpet. So a bit like Revelation 17, we have 7, and 4 have already passed. Like there's this illustration of the first came, the 2nd came, the 3rd came, the 4th came, and then now it says woe, woe, woe for the reasons of those which are yet to come. So it's like the same illustration of the beast that was and is yet to come. So it's telling us that there's 4 trumpets which have gone past, and the other trumpets which are yet to come will have woes. And how many times does it mention woe in there? 3 times, right? And how many trumpets are left when you take away the 4? There's 3. Just to show that there's 3 woes, if you go to Revelation 11, verse 14. I don't know this. It's probably simple that we've all understood this, but it's just good to show these things in the Bible and not just interjecting sometimes. It just strengthens our understanding of how we are applying these things.
And the 2nd woe is past, and behold, the 3rd woe cometh quickly.
Okay, so very clear verse. It tells us that there's 3 woes with there's 3 trumpets which are yet to come. So just a recap of the trumpets. There's a few proof texts in the Bible, and for the sake of time, we won't go through them. But we see that trumpets are used in different scenarios in the Bible. I wanted to pick up one of them in the book of Joshua. Can anyone tell me anything that happened in the book of Joshua to do with trumpets and what these trumpets symbolized in this history? Yeah. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
The Israelites were given instruction to Joshua on how to conquer Jericho. And they were told to, on the 7th day, they marched around the house 7 times. And after that, the priests were supposed to blow their trumpets 7 times.
Yeah, exactly. So we have the children of Israel. They've been in Egypt, they've been in bondage, they've gone through the wilderness. Moses has died, Joshua's taken over, and now they want to conquer the land that they're going to go into. And they come to Jericho, and Joshua has this encounter with this angel who we know is Christ. And then he's told, instructed that to take down this city. How do you take down this? How would they take down the city? It wouldn't be by war or conquest. I mean, they would go and fight, but what would actually take down the walls would be just the blowing of the trumpets. All they had to do was circle around and blow the trumpets, and the walls fell. So remember, this is at the time where there's not much military technology. So if you have a place with big walls and you just have like a piece of metal sword, it would take you so long to even dent anything in the wall. So this blowing of the trumpets was something supernatural, an interjection of God on behalf of His people for the downfall of this city. Yeah. So when you look in the Bible, that's one of the symbols of the trumpets. The trumpets mean that it calls for the downfall of the city. You find if you read the book of Leviticus and Numbers, whenever the children of Israel went to war and they needed special help, they would always do what? They would call on God and blow the trumpet, and then there'd be some wonderful interposition on behalf of them by God. I think even in the story of Gideon, they also had a trumpet. Yeah. So all they did was just break the pitches and blow the trumpet, and all of a sudden, what happened? Yeah, God's enemies. What happened to God's enemies?
Gone.
Yeah, they're gone. So this is like a tool or a way. This is a way of God discomfiting God's enemies, right? The other thing this was for, the trumpets were for, was to gather God's people. So if we go to Numbers chapter 10 and read verse 2 and 3.
It says, make thee 2 trumpets of silver. Of a whole piece shall thou make them, that thou mayest use them for the calling of the assembly, and for the journey of the camps. And when they shall blow with them, all the assembly shall assemble themselves to be at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation.
Okay. So the other thing that this is for, and this will be really important for us to understand later, further down when we're making an application to our time, is that the blowing of the trumpets is a call to God's people to congregate, to come together to the door of the tabernacle or the sanctuary in heaven. And what happens if you disobey that trumpet? Yeah, you'll be cut off from people. If God calls you using a trumpet because he's the one who gave instruction to the priests. He said, when I want you to come, I'll tell you, you blow the trumpets and they'll come over. And that would be something to keep in mind. So keep in mind that aspect of it. So the two things I want to focus on with the trumpets is the symbol of the downfall of a city or of God's enemies. And it's also a call for God's people to congregate. So in Great Controversy 4-6, paragraph 2, I just wanted to read this part in bold because we saw that the trumpets in Joshua chapter 6, I know we didn't read it, but I'm just assuming we're all familiar with that story, that this was the downfall of a city. It was the city of Jericho. And this quote will tell us that a city can be used to symbolize a kingdom, right? So in Great Controversy it says, the marriage represents the reception by Christ of his kingdom. The holy city, the New Jerusalem, which is the capital and representative of the kingdom, is called the bride, the Lamb's wife. Okay? So this has given us a way of proof texting what the city represents. And one of the things it represents is the kingdom. Right? When you go to Revelation chapter 16, verse 13, I think. Turn to Revelation 16, verse 13. There's a Great Controversy 4-6, paragraph 2. So I know I'm speeding through this part. I'm going to slow down a bit, but I realize I have a short time. I like to go slower, but I need to cover so much in a short time. So Revelation 16, verse 19, I mean. So.
And the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. And great Babylon came in remembrance before God to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath.
Okay, so we see here that Babylon is being referred to as a city. And when we looked at Revelation 17, it was talking about this woman and she had something on her forehead. What was written on her forehead? Mystery, Babylon, and that represented which kingdom?
The papacy.
Yeah, it represented the papacy. And what did the papacy look like? Was the papacy just a city? Was it just the Vatican? When we look at the fifth kingdom, was the papacy just the Vatican City, or was it more than that? Yeah, it was a kingdom. So when we were looking at this, the 7 mountains are 7 kings with the 7 heads, which all represent the kingdom. When we went to Daniel, we found that these are symbols of kingdoms, and one of those kingdoms was Babylon. Yeah, spiritual Babylon. And he is being referred to as a city. I know here it's referring to the one at the end of the world, but that was also referred to as the 8th kingdom. So I'm saying all that just to recap the fact that these trumpets symbolize the downfall of a city, in particular a city which is God's enemy. And we've just seen a city can represent a kingdom. So with that in mind, let's go to Revelation chapter 8 and see if we can locate when to look for these 7 trumpets. Revelation chapter 8. And we'll read from verse 2 to verse 4.
And I saw 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense which came with the prayers of the saints ascended up before God out of the angel's hand.
Okay, So in Psalm 77, verse 13, what does it tell us? Does anybody know that text offhand? Psalm 77, verse 13.
Thy way, O Lord, is in the sanctuary.
Yeah.
Thy way, O Lord, is in the sanctuary.
Yeah, that way, O Lord, is in the sanctuary. So we'll have a look at the sanctuary here to see if you can answer to us when to locate these 7 trumpets. So one of the questions we have to ask before we say what it is when it is. It's very important to understand that, because some people might put these trumpets in the future, others might put it way in the past. And so we have to ask ourselves, actually, how do we find out when these trumpets were before we can know what to look for? So in Revelation chapter 8, we have this vision of the sanctuary, and we see these 7 angels stood somewhere in the sanctuary. Where they stood, or in fact, there's another angel who comes, and where is this angel?
He stood before God.
He stood before God, and what part of the sanctuary is there?
The altar.
Okay. So let me just draw an illustration of the sanctuary. So can anyone? Okay, what is this one? Outer court. But OC. Any other compartments? Which are the ones? Holy place. And most holy place. Okay, and what about the items in the sanctuary? Let's start on the outer court. What items on the outside?
On the outside?
Yeah.
The laver?
Yeah, so we have the laver. And on the altar. Okay. Then what else do we have? Once we get into the holy place.
Candlestick.
Yeah, so we have a candlestick.
Altar.
A table of showbread. And an altar of incense. And then what do we have in the most holy place?
I'm sorry?
What do we have in the most holy place? Yes, we have the ark. Do we have anything else? It's kind of Christ there. But the other thing is he's very
Can't see what
gentle.
you have there.
Sorry, this is my very not so good attempt at drawing the ark of the testimony with the 2 tables of stone inside. There's 2 other things in there.
The rod
And the manna.
The cherubim, they're not really parts of the.
inside the Ark of the Covenant is the command.
Yeah, so I've drawn them inside. I was just looking for furniture. So like
Furniture.
Christ
Okay.
was there, the angels were there, the cherubim were there.
The,
But things that were permanently there, like fixtures. Of,
yeah, but with what it's called, the altar.
in the most holy place?
In the most holy place, no.
No, it wasn't there. So we've already drawn that altar there. So we had we had Aaron's rod that budded. Yep. And we had the pot of manna. Remember?
The pot of manna.
Yes, the pot of manna from the story of Exodus.
Yeah.
Moses is told, put the pot of manna in there and put it in the most holy place as a witness to the later generations. And also there's the Aaron's rod that budded. Okay, so we have the outer court, the holy place, and the most holy place. Now, can these parts of the sanctuary also be illustrations of time as well?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Would you mind explaining that? Or anybody?
The report to the earth where Christ was baptized and offered as a sacrifice. And then he ascended after his death and resurrection in AD 31. And then he moved from the holy place into the most holy place in 1844.
Okay. Did everybody else get that?
No.
Get that? Okay, I'll go over what she just said. So she said the outer court represents the history of Christ in the earth. Right? So what do we see in the outer court? We have the altar. The altar of burnt offering. What does that represent?
The slain.
Yeah? Yeah, that represents Calvary. Because you had to kill the lamb for your sins. And Christ was the lamb who took away our sins through his death on the cross. And we have the laver, and that represented the washing, baptism of Christ. Right? And then what happened after he finished his ministry? So he died, he's resurrected, and what then happens? In terms of the sanctuary.
He sent
into heaven.
Ascension.
Okay, when does he ascend into the heaven? Into heaven. Pardon? 40 days. Yeah. Okay. This is probably tough. It wasn't such a tough question. Like just a year.
Oh, the year.
Yeah.
AD 31.
Oh, the year. Oh.
Yeah. AD 31. Are we comfortable with that? Yeah. So he was crucified and he went up to heaven 40 days after his resurrection, which is so he goes into the holy place in 31 AD, right? Because he goes there to be our
intercessor.
Yeah, our intercessor. And then what comes next? So we have the outer court is his ministry on the earth. Then the holy place is he goes into there in 31 AD until what time?
Until 1844, then he moves into the most holy.
So 1844, where our wonderful message of the century comes to light because he stands up and moves into the most holy place. Those who followed down the three angels' messages went into the most holy place with him, where he is now, right? So I'll put the most holy place as 1844 AD to now. Yeah? So can we see that the sanctuary is also time? That we all know this is the sanctuary. It's also these types, it's events that happen, but it's also time. So this has given us an overview of the timelines of each compartment of the sanctuary. So if you go back to Revelation chapter 8 and you read verse 3 again and see if we can locate a time where we can place these 7 trumpets, these 7 angels with 7 trumpets.
And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a gold censer, and there was given unto him much incense, and he should offer it to the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne.
Okay, so where is this? Who is this angel?
Jesus.
Yeah, it's Jesus. Why? Because he's
taken place in the holy place.
Yeah, so he has a golden censer, and that is a type of when you have one minister. When you read the book of Hebrews, when you have Christ as our high priest, he's ministering in the sanctuary for us. None of the other angels are doing this ministration, right? So this is a picture of Christ, and where is he? He's in the. You mentioned it.
No, the holy place. He's in the holy place.
So there was 2 altars that we mentioned. There was this altar and there's this altar. So how can we tell that?
It's the altar of incense.
Yeah. So he's in the altar of incense.
Right before the most holy place.
Right before the throne, which is
the ark.
The ark, right? And it's the golden altar. So the altar on the outside was made of. What is it made of?
Stone.
Not made of stone. Yeah, it was made of brass. A bit of brass, right? It's wood but overlaid with brass.
Oh.
So all of these are made of wood. Even the ark was made of wood, but it's overlaid with gold. Right? So this is the laver was made of brass. Remember, they had the earrings of bronze that they had to go with. That was converted into the earrings and the looking glasses and things like that. But bronze was converted. So on the outer court, the stuff there is like brass. It's
The brazen altar.
yeah, the brazen altar.
Brass altar.
Yeah, yeah. And on the inside, all the items there, the golden candlestick, the golden table of showbread, the golden altar of incense, and then you have the gold. Obviously, the ark is made of gold. All the rest of it is gold. Right. So, what does this tell us about when this scene is taking place with the 7 angels?
This
Yeah.
is
During that period, 31 AD to
Okay. So these angels with the 7 trumpets are before another angel who's ministering at the golden altar, which is in the holy place. Right? And we saw that the holy place is a symbol of where Christ was, because it was Christ who was here before the altar. It was a symbol of Christ and his work between 31 AD and 1844 AD. Right? Does that make sense? So, in order to locate these trumpets, it's given us at least a time period, a rough guide of you look for the trumpets between this year and this year. We have a start and an end. We have 31 AD to 1844 AD. We know he ascended, went into the holy place in 31 AD, and he came out again in 1844 AD. So the other thing, what did we say a trumpet is a symbol of? Symbol of the downfall of it. Yeah, the gathering, and also the downfall. Yeah, downfall of a kingdom. Yeah, specifically an enemy of God. And when we look in Daniel 2, we have this statue with kingdoms on there. Are these the kingdoms of God, or are they
Kingdoms of the world.
the kingdoms of the world? Then is that the friend of God or the enemy of God? It's the enemy of God, right? So we're looking for one of or more of the kingdoms or the cities, which are, because the trumpet is the downfall of a city is a kingdom. We're looking for the downfall of kingdoms between 31 AD and 1844 AD. So I don't know if you're very familiar with the charts that we have, the 1843 charts, but they give us a timeline of when these kingdoms were in existence. So does anybody know when? Can anyone give me a rough estimate of when Babylon was existing? Anybody? Okay.
Babylon was what, 168?
168?
I could remember.
Does anyone have a chart for the Samuel? So down in the middle of the chart, we have a timeline. Yeah, we have a timeline from the beginning to the end, and it gives us different dates of the beginning and ending of kingdom. But it gives us the dates of the turning over from one kingdom to another. Okay, yeah, you can use this. So tell us about Babylon. It should be the number right at the top. Well, actually, it's a bit over. Does you understand?
677.
Okay. I'll put 677, but this includes Assyria in there. Yeah, so Assyria / Babylon. Jeremiah. If I let's turn to Jeremiah 50 verse. Let's turn to Jeremiah chapter 50, and while we're going there, we know this the vision of Daniel 2 and Daniel 7 is it a different vision or the same vision? It's the same vision. So you see the same order of the kingdoms in Daniel 2 as in Daniel 7. And in Daniel 7, it starts off with the vision of a lion. And this lion represents Babylon. So let's go to Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 17. And what did these powers do? They scattered the people of Israel, right? That's what we see in this message of the 2520 is scattering God's people. And let's see how this who did this work of scattering. It was in Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 17. Could you please read? 50%.
Israel is a scattered sheep. The lions have driven him away. First, the king of Assyria had devoured him. And last, this Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had broken his leg.
Okay. So what is this telling us? It's telling us that it's more or less telling us that Assyria and Babylon, you can conflate them at one point. They're almost the same. So when Manasseh was taken captive by the king of Assyria, he was carried to
Syria.
He's carried to Babylon. There's the king of Assyria. In 2 Chronicles 33, it says that 2 Chronicles 33 verse 11, I think it says that this king of Assyria came and carried him captive and took him to Babylon. And Babylon kind of just transitioned into Assyria transitioned into Babylon. Right? So at one level they're doing the same thing. And here in Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 17, it tells us that Assyria first and then Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar is just finishing the work that Assyria started. And it says both of these are lions. And that's why you'll see at the top, although it doesn't mention Assyria on the chart, it says Babylon and then it says the date 677. Right? And this will run all the way until the time of Medo-Persia. And then in chapter 5 will tell us that Darius came in and took the kingdom from Belshazzar. Does anybody know what date this is? When he transitioned from Babylon to Medo-Persia? Yeah? 538 BC. And then from Medo-Persia, was a time until in Daniel chapter 8 it tells us there's a great horn, great goat that comes and smashes this ram, and there's a great notable horn between his eyes. So this is the king of Grecia, and the first big horn is the first great king. Whoever has the chart, could you please tell us what date this is? Please. Yeah, so we'll put 332 BC. That's when Greece comes onto the scene. And then, it doesn't really specify, but I'll say, right. I would say that pagan Rome came to be the supreme ruler of the kingdoms of the world in 31 BC. That's not really, I don't think that's on the chart. 31 BC is not on the chart. When I say 31 BC is, when you look at Daniel chapter 8, it talks about this little horn and it's going to wax to the east, to the south, and to the pleasant land. So it has to take how many obstacles before it becomes a power? 3. So the east represented Syria. And what was the pleasant land? Jerusalem, Israel. And the south was Egypt, right? So it took Syria around 65 BC, 65, 64 BC. It took Israel in 64 BC, 63 BC. And in 31 BC, we find that this is the Battle of Actium, where now Rome now takes Egypt. And now that's the third obstacle that is overcome and can be the supreme ruler of the world at that time. So this is where it comes into being the ruler of the world. So these kingdoms existed before they became the rulers of the entire world. So like Greece, here it says that 332 BC, but actually Greece was in existence since the 500s, 600s, 700s BC. It just never came into being the ruler of the whole world until it came and overtook Medo-Persia, right? So that's why I'm putting 31 BC. And this papal Rome, when does that go until? I mean, pagan Rome, when does it go until? Well, when does pagan Rome come? Okay, it's a more complicated question than I make it out to be. I'll put 538 because that's when papal Rome came to supremacy. No, we're just asking when papal Rome came into power.
Oh, okay.
Right, 538 BC until what date?
1798.
1798 BC, AD. I don't know putting BC. You let me get away with it. 1798. Okay, so these are the kingdoms so far. I mean, we are still in the history of this power, so we don't need to draw the ones which are coming next because we know that we're past 1844, so we're not looking for the trumpets past 1844. Looking at the trumpets. So, what did we say about the trumpets? We saw that they were in the holy place, and they are down for a city or a kingdom. And so this gives us a time when we can look for them. And we identified that the holy place represented the time period from 3180 to 1844 AD. And now we just did a timeline of the kingdoms, which could be brought down because these are the enemies of God. And which kingdom or kingdoms fall between this history of 3180 to 1844 AD.
Pagan people.
Okay, so we find, I'll draw very crude. This is 31 AD. Yeah? Which is somewhere in the middle of the reign of pagan Rome. It's not drawn to scale. And it goes until 1844. So we're looking for the trumpets here. But we know that the trumpets are a downfall of a kingdom, and this kingdom hasn't fallen yet. So which other two do we have in this history that we can look for? Right? So we have to look for whatever the trumpets are to bring down pagan Rome and papal Rome. So that's how we locate the trumpets in history. So a recap of... Okay, I'm not going to give a recap of the first four trumpets because it will take too long and my time is already going. So, really cool. So I hope that was good. Can I rub this off? Is there still too? Okay. Right. So what we find is that the first four trumpets led to the dissolution of pagan Rome. So in history, and you can read this in Uriah Smith's book, it'll tell you that the first four trumpets represent the Ostrogoths, the Vandals, the Huns, and the Heruli. These are powers which were attacking Rome, specifically Western Rome, and brought it to the point where it divides. So when we look in Daniel chapter 7, we saw that there's a beast with how many horns? Beast with 10 horns. And this was the fourth beast. This represents pagan Rome. And how we got to have those 10 horns was pagan Rome was just one big empire. But then at some point, they started being attacked by these barbarian tribes. And these brought a progressive downfall of the Western Roman side. And they ended up dividing from one empire. First split into two, and then the Western side was brought into 10 different fragments because of the attacks of the first four trumpets. Now, we just wanted to have a look at a principle as to why this happened. Okay. So, in Proverbs, it tells us that I don't know the scripture I've had, but I know the principle. It tells us that the curse caused us shall not come. So when you have these trumpets, it's not just God just decides to, oh, I just want to attack this kingdom. Let me just send people there to go and attack it. No, there's a reason why these trumpets come, and they bring a, what does it bring? It brings a downfall of the kingdom. Or one of the ways you'll see Sister White say it, and I'm going to adopt it. They bring about national ruin. Okay, so we'll see where this national ruin comes. So this is taken from Review and Herald, December 18th, 1888, paragraph 6. Doing that again. Review and Herald, December 18th, 1888, paragraph 6. And it says, a time is coming when the law of God is in a special sense to be made void in our land. The rulers of our nation will by legislative enactments, enforce the Sunday law. So what time period is this talking about, or what event? What is the thing? It's the Sunday law. It tells us. But I just want us to pick that up there. It's the Sunday law. And thus God's people be brought into great peril. When our nation in its legislative councils shall enact laws to bind the consciences of men in regard to the religious privileges, enforcing Sunday observance and bringing oppressive power to bear against those who keep the seventh-day Sabbath, the law of God will, to all intents and purposes, be made void in our land. So she's saying that there's going to be a time when they pass a Sunday law, it's going to be oppressive, and it's going to, bind God's people. They won't be able to keep the Sabbath as they want to. And she tells us what the result will be. She says, a national apostasy will be followed by national ruin. Now, in Tyler's presentations, he went through the principle that God's dealing with man is ever the same. How he dealt with people in the past is how he deals with people now. So we see here there's a Sunday law, and what will follow the Sunday law, according to this. National ruin will follow the Sunday law, right? And God shows the end from the beginning. So this won't be the first occasion this has happened. So can anyone think of any Sunday laws that happened in the past? Right? Does anybody remember Emperor Constantine?
Yes.
Right? And he passed a Sunday law, but that's why we worship on Sunday nowadays. Well, people, not we as in me, but as in Christians, worship on Sunday. Sorry, Martha, did you have a question?
What was the year?
321.
321.
Yep. So in 321 AD, I'll put it here. Emperor Constantine passes the Sunday law. And Ellen White tells us to look at these Sunday laws to know how the Sunday law in our history will also come to be. So he passes the Sunday law, but at the beginning it's just like, okay, just don't work on Sunday. But then as time goes, the laws get more and more oppressive. It says you can't, not only can you not work on Sunday, you can't put out your washing, you can't do these things. And before you know it, you have to keep Sunday like the way we keep Sabbath. There's things we don't do on Sabbath, right? Like we don't work, we don't cook, we don't do these things which we were supposed to do before. So it gets quite tight not quite tight, but it gets quite restrictive of what you can do on Sunday. But that's not the only thing that really marks the full force of the Sunday law. So if you read in this quote, it says, it enforces, in the bold, it says, enforcing Sunday observance and bringing oppressive power to bear against those who keep the seventh-day Sabbath. So it got to a point where they were not only saying, don't work on Sunday, they now started saying, you can't worship on the Sabbath, and you had increasing penalties for keeping the Sabbath. So, you'd have censures and then fines and jail and eventually being exiled and all that. And that's when we have this principle in, I think it's Psalm 119, 125. It says it's time for thee to act, Lord, for they have made void thy law. Yeah, and that's what it says here. So when they make void the law by breaking the fourth commandment, then what does God do? He has to act. That's what is written in his book, right? It says when that happens, he has to act. So we see in 321 AD, there's a Sunday law passed, and as time went, it escalated just in severity until 395, where it's like God said, okay, enough. I'm going to send in my armies to take care of the Roman Empire, who will bring these Sunday laws against my people. And so you see, from 321 to 95 AD is roughly 70 years. Not exactly 70 years. Maybe if you go to the history, you might be able to find that. It's roughly 70 years. And what happened is, in 395, you have, I think it was Alaric? I can't remember off the top of my head, but I remember there's Alaric. He was either king of the Ostrogoths or the Vandals. And he came and started attacking Western Rome. And then you had so that was the Ostrogoths were the first ones. And then the Vandals came after that, attacking it. Genseric with the Vandals. Yeah, and then Attila with the Huns, Attila the Hun. And then we had Odoacer with the Heruli, right? And that culminated in 476 AD. So we had the Ostrogoths, the Vandals, the Heruli, and
you skipped the Huns.
Yeah, skip the Huns. Sorry, the Huns were third. Okay, and they were used to bring down Rome. So when Odoacer, the last one came, the last trumpet, he came and basically went to the emperor. The emperor was a young boy at this time. He was about 5 or 12 years old or something like that, and he killed basically everybody in the council where he sat. But he didn't kill the emperor because he had mercy on him, probably. But the other thing he said, he wrote a paper and he said, you have to dissolve this empire and let every kind of peoples have their own area, right? So the emperor signs this, and you no longer have the Western Rome as one entity. It now breaks up into 10, because now you have every single tribe now that they can have their own area. The Alemanni, who are Germans, have their place. The Franks have their place. The Anglo-Saxons have theirs. It gets to it's just like the United States. Let's say the United States was principally what do you call the states?
Huh?
If it was just like federal, is federal the right?
You mean just the?
Yeah, just the federal government.
Oh yeah, the federal government.
Yeah, so imagine the United States is the federal government, and then one day someone from one of the states goes in and tells the president, you have to sign this thing to say that you no longer have power over us, and it breaks up into the 50. Every state now becomes its own people. I don't know whether you're saying probably worked the other way around.
Of course, yeah.
But it's just an illustration of what we do, right? And that happened by 476 AD. Right, so that's the lightning review of the first one, Trumpets. Yeah, I don't know. What time did you want to? Yeah, I mean to stop for some.
It's 3:40, or it's 4:45 right now. It's 42.
It's not like that place.
We could take a break and then.
Okay, I'll just finish one point and then we'll stop. Right. So, what were the tribes again? The 4 tribes, the first 4 trumpets.
Ostrogoths, the
Vandals, the Huns, and the Heruli. And they take down Western Rome and make it into, basically fragments into, everybody has their own piece of land. Now later in 538 AD, who comes into power? Yeah, Papal Rome comes into power, and you'll see that they passed the Sunday law in 538 AD. I don't think it was actually passing a new Sunday law, but I think it was just reinforcing this Sunday law which was before. And we'll see that the 5th trumpet came around 606 roughly around 606 AD. So, son-in-law here, and here's the trumpet. So we had a son-in-law in 321 AD. Roughly 70 years later, you have the first trumpet. The son-in-law, which is reinforced in 538 AD, roughly 70 years later, brought you to 606 AD, where the fifth trumpet started. I know we haven't gone through the fifth trumpet yet, but this is just tying the two together. So to see that it's a response to the son-in-law. The son-in-law comes, the trumpets come, and it brings the downfall of these kingdoms, which we saw was pagan and papal. And interestingly enough, Daniel chapter 8 talks about this fourth beast with 10 horns, and what happens to those 10 horns. What's the next phase? What happens to the beast with 10 horns? 3 are plucked up, and another little horn comes up. Another little horn is in the papacy. Does anybody know the 3 horns that were plucked up? Who they were? Vandals, the Ostrogoths, the Huronite. These were exactly the same powers that were like the trumpets before, right? So you can see even the rise of the papacy is linked to do something with the trumpets. Okay, so we'll take a pause there and just bring the subject to a close.